में 1 ग्राम से लेके 1 किलो तक एफिशिएंसी है एंड these are all the investment product 4 lakh purity के. Then for jewelers and the traders like Ajay bhai, we do the casted bus. That's a normal 1 kilo and the 100 gram. So India में 90% import होता है. And then we also do the one with solvent. So green and that is the so purity और making.
सर ये इन्वेस्टमेंट के पर्पज से और ये ज्वेलरी मेकिंग के पर्पज से ऐसे कह सकते हैं ना विवेक जी.
It's like a butter sugar and
सिक्योरिटी में तो
no phone. And phone is also integrated. So this is the solvent. Give me the occasion for boiled milk to make. So we are the only milk outside this case.
Indian coin का क्या
And then we do some pendants, lollies.
अच्छे प्रोडक्ट्स निकालते हैं सर. अप्रोक्सीमेटली सिल्वर कॉइन 10 टन का सेल होगा.
Silver, last year we did around 15 ton of silver.
कॉइन है और
Gold का 8 days का है. Last year वैसे भी बहुत खराब था. 4 महीने 5 महीने बाद. London good delivery. In the London good delivery we are authorized to make this thing. And this silver है. इसमें एक ही चीज़ उठाने के लिए आप बिल करते हैं.
21 स्टेट से आए.
गिफ्ट सिटी के अंदर अगर चेंज को तो सोना खरीदेंगे तो वहीं से ड्यूटी पे आजकल ना हमारे किसी का
सबका साथ मिलती है.
तो इसमें क्या है कि FTWZ सिटी में बन रहा है. तो FTWZ बनेगा ना तो ओवरसीज सप्लायर अपना और उसको हम एक्सचेंज के थ्रू बिजनेस कर सकते हैं. यदि जरूरत पड़े तो अपना वही देगा तो कोई ओवर स्टॉक भी नहीं करेगा और कोई अपने ऊपर लेवरेज भी ज़्यादा करेगा. तो ये अच्छा ऑप्शन भी गवर्नमेंट
मतलब किसी भी स्थिति में विपरीत परिस्थितियों में भी सामान बेच देना मतलब गंजे को कंगी बेच देना हमारा के पास. आज जैसे ये बड़े परेशान है, ये कहते हैं कि माल नहीं बिकता, बनाने क्यों नहीं बिकता है, क्या माल आज है क्या कराना है.
सेहत अच्छी बना के श्री सिटी में एक ही FTWZ में एक ही लॉजिस्टिक है, वो ग्रीन्स आ है. और लास्ट ईयर
अधिकार जमा रखा है इन्होंने कहा कि किसी को आइटम लेकर दे देंगे, माल हमारे यहाँ से
3,200 टन सिल्वर लास्ट ईयर श्री सिटी ने क्लियर किया है, जो इंडिया का 40% है. यानी 40% श्री सिटी से
सर. ये सिक्योरिटी को सर्विस है तो बहुत अच्छी है. इनका सिस्टम भी है सर कि जैसे इस गाड़ी में माल जा रहा है तो एक गाड़ी खाली साथ में बोलो सर मिस्टर समीर पाटिल बोलो
ये सी
मूवमेंट तो उसकी ट्रैक हो रही है, वो व्हीकल पे नहीं कहीं बुलियन और रिफाइनर भी है. कोई बात क्या है कि
कुछ मेंबर्स आते हैं कि हमको
हमारे 2000 काउंटर नंबर
यानी छोटे छोटे जो बुलियन डीलर
में रखा था. ये अपना कैपिटल है सर.
इंग्लिश को अप्लाई कर
उसको पसंद करते हैं हम लोग सब इस पर ला रहे हैं मेड इन इंडिया लिखा हुआ लग रहा है बच्चों में सब दिया हुआ है ये सब मेड इन इंडिया चालू कर
लास्ट टाइम आपसे जो ऑफिस की बात हुई वही सर चीज़ का डिफरेंस जो 0.65 का रहेगा मतलब
अभी यार सर एक प्रॉब्लम ये है
तो थोड़ा सा जो हमने कहा था कि सर
हमें सर इसको प्रमोट कराना चाहते हैं कैटरिंग जब आपको हमें दिया था ना तब 2% का डिफरेंस था 10%
वो तो बात नहीं थी मैंने फिर कहा की थी
अभी क्या सब पहले इसलिए रुकी
मैं इसलिए कह रही थी कि ये चीज़ नॉर्मली
एक्चुअली क्या है सर हम प्रमोट करना चाहते हैं तो उससे क्या है अगर वो 1.5% अगर हो जाएगा सर तो आप एक तय मानना हम लोग 2% का दे रहे हैं और अगर ये हो जाएगा ना तो सबको डेवलपमेंट होगा अभी क्या हमारा इस मदरसा की पढ़ाई थोड़ा कुछ स्नैक्स
नहीं कुछ ब्रेकफास्ट करके आपने मीटिंग करनी है
अरे जी प्लीज
इंडिया की पॉलिसी सेंटर का कंबाइन
मैं सीधे घर से बोल कर नहीं पानी डाल तो इसमें जो आपके सारी कंक्लूजन ठीक है वो जरूरी एक स्टेज के बाद फिर ये इवेंट का जो है इवेंट मैनेजमेंट क्योंकि इवेंट अच्छा सा होता है VIP से ऊपर जाए हाँ रेफर किया जा सकता है एज ए न्यूट्रल पॉइंट ऐसे ही मेरे पास अपनी इंडस्ट्री की तरफ से आएंगे और कुछ आएंगे मैं उस पर कोई एक्शन लूँगा तो ये समझ आएगा कि मैं इनको मदद कर रहा हूँ लेकिन जब इन कॉन्फ्रेंसेस के थ्रू कुछ आप सोल्यूशन देते हैं तो वो लगता है कि पूरे जब आप बनाएंगे जैसे तो मैं पर्टिकुलरली मानता हूँ कि इस इंडस्ट्री में सेल्फ रेगुलेशन इज़ द बेस्ट थिंग ठीक है आप जितना ज़्यादा गवर्नमेंट को इन्वॉल्व करेंगे इंडस्ट्री के लिए प्रॉब्लम्स कम नहीं होंगी बढ़ेंगी ठीक है तो सेल्फ रेगुलेशन में क्या कर रहे हैं वो अगर आपका आता है देन एक गवर्नमेंट इज सेटिस्फाइड कि जो चीज़ हम करना चाहते थे वो सेल्फ रेगुलेशन में ही हो रही है दैट इज़ द बेस्ट वे टू एक्चुअली ब्रिंग इम्प्रूवमेंट्स अगर आप कहें कि नहीं गवर्नमेंट इन्फोर्स करे उसको फिर आप देखिएगा आपकी इंडस्ट्री ब्लॉक हो जाएगी
जैसे कर रहे हैं
रजिस्टर्ड हो जाएगी
आज मेरे पास
गवर्नमेंट का इन्फोर्स करने का तरीका जो है वो प्रोग्रेसिव नहीं होता है वाटर टाइट भी होता है सो वाटर टाइट होता है फिर कम्युनिकेशन
डू बिजनेस में तो इंटरफेरेंस नहीं हो सकता ना, क्योंकि राइट टू डू बिजनेस पे क्या इंटरफेयर करेंगे इसका? आज तो बैंक से रेगुलेटेड है आरबीआई से।
सर वो चेंजेस तो आप किसी भी टाइम इम्पोर्ट पॉलिसी में लेके आ ही सकते हैं, जिस दिन भी आपको लगे।
आ सकते हैं, क्या लाना चाहिए
सर
लाना चाहिए।
सर
बहुत
लाने
अच्छा होगा यार।
सर वो पास्ट में हमेशा जो भी चेंजेस आते थे इम्पोर्ट पॉलिसी ही आते थे।
etc. So that'll be very good.
Recommendations are never regulatory kind, so is it always recommendatory? I mean, is it any binding kind of situation?
I think it's a combination. I think we on our side, there is a necessary for industry to self-regulate in a sense, and the industry to adopt their standards, just like the LBMA does, like the DMCC does, that are mandatory for their members, but they're self-regulatory. But that needs to be supported by government action, endorsed by government action, in our view. And this is what's happening in China. We're working now in China, and as of next year, an audit program in China for gold and 3T products will be put in place, and that's supported by the government, and that will be mandatory by the government by 2020. So there's a time, a phase-in approach that the government says, okay, we support this process, we'll get it up and running, but by 3 years, we'll then make it mandatory for all importers. That's going to be in China. That's also the same approach the EU.
Members of ours are also feeling that it's in a way pushing LBMA standards towards or some other standards towards.
No, not necessarily. I mean, the LBMA standard, the DMCC standard, the EU regulation, the Chinese standard are all based on the OECD guidance. That's the international framework. They can all then be tailored and adapted to the various contexts. So China's adopted it. They developed the Chinese due diligence guidelines and adapted the international standards to your needs. So it's not about pushing LBMA on you. No, it's about using international benchmarks that are tailored to India, that's Indian owned, but still meeting the international benchmark. So that then we can say, then we can go to those other markets and say, you should recognize these. The EU regulation needs to recognize the Indian standards so that there's market access there. Because there's a new EU regulation now that's coming into play as well on this.
They shared about
Oh, did they?
and how do you, once suppose you say that okay, these are the due diligence guidelines, so everyone should stick to it, and then how do you do the assessment, some periodic assessment or something like that?
So we, first it's really for those markets themselves to implement those standards and enforce them themselves. So the LBMA, they look over the actual, audit program. The DMCC looks over their audit program. China will look over their audit program. And then periodically we will look at all those and look at the alignment of them. So we're in the process of doing an alignment assessment of the DMCC and the LBMA and the Responsible Jewelry Council to see their alignment with the OECD guidance. They all volunteered for this. And those reports will be published out of last year. But it's a learning process. It's not a sort of monitoring and with a stick. It's more of a let's get together and improve and align. And then once we publish those reports, hopefully that will then say, look, the OECD says we're aligned, and so you banks and markets need to recognize our standard as equal and equivalent. That's the idea. And so we will then continue to do that kind of alignment assessment work with new standards that come on. So if we collaborate with the Bullion Federation and other groups, by the way, as something for us, it's very important that we're not that it's an inclusive process. So any Indian due diligence guidelines based on the standards, from our view, should also involve the other industry players and the jewelers, etc., because they need it for their market credibility and their export purposes, etc. But yeah, and then we will then work with that to support it, and we're willing to provide our own resources and money to support the development of that, and also training and awareness building in India, and any policy advice you'd like from us, we're also happy to make. And then we can then afterwards issue a report on looking at after you've had some time to implement it, to look at the alignment so that the market can also recognize that.
Yesterday somebody had raised a query that if he purchases ore from Africa, then how does he ensure? For example, they have kind of concerns, child labor, usage of wrong chemicals like mercury while extraction of ore. So one of the members asked that how do we ensure security? And why would our supplier, if he's a trader of ore sitting in Africa somewhere, why would he tell me which mine I bought it from? So he responded to you. Yes, can you explain some of the response that you
In fact,
Yes, sir.
this is what
Right.
they are potentially got. And I think this is something which is most important. kind of overstays. That kind of awareness now, I think everybody has to be on the same page. So we can do that relation across the country, across platforms. So I think that is something which is definitely where some sort of capacity building will be required. You can help us in that capacity.
It would be our privilege to do so. We have
The main point is that the industry in India, with the support of the government, is actually wanting to evolve best practices. And they should be known for their best practices of best kind worldwide. That is what everybody wants to achieve. If there is some lack of awareness or some gap somewhere, I think we should also that is the objective. And it would not be an issue of one particular tender facing a problem. Once that awareness penetrates through the application or other industry, so then we can say that probably a person has to just do his job, that's it. He knows that what he's doing, the processes are well defined, so nothing wrong with that. This is how I see it.
I agree with you.
I said they are talking about upstream. That is all about sourcing. I said the one whom you are selling also matters.
Yes, of course. Yeah. And that traceability should be there
Traceability, yes.
from any point to any point.
GST sir
GST will very much help this, in
Yes.
fact. It will create a comprehensive way of understanding the traceability, so it's exciting plans. And you know, the demonetization process has already greatly helped this as well to rid us of the cash-based economy that drives some of the illegal activity. So I think there's a really good basis here. And it's for us, it's very encouraging to see that the industry, you know, invited me to speak as a keynote address, gave me an opportunity to speak yesterday, wants to do this collaboration. Of course, we've engaged with the GJTC for a number of years as well. So, you know, I'm very, very encouraged by the industry willingness. And, you know, like I said, we are, you know, keen and open to collaborate because obviously in the end, this is the biggest gold market in the world. This is where gold actually matters. So if we don't do it here, then, you know, it doesn't, you know, we need to, from our perspective.
We had this discussion earlier also.
Yes.
We need to have some practical solutions also from you.
Yeah.
Like most of the time they suggest that we should be buying from the big mines, but the big mines they are always selling only to big refineries in Switzerland. And where do we buy from?
Yesterday he clarified that he doesn't demote the artisanal mining. A lot of people ask
See,
this.
I've discussed with him many times. He is a very good friend of mine, but this is where we are stuck always. See, we have to run our business. So where do we buy our gold from? And if I tell my supplier, you please tell me from where you have bought. They say, sorry, we can't damage our business secret to you.
That's also your solution yesterday. Yeah, I think that's all.
Sure. Well, there's two things. First of all, just to clarify, no, actually, we encourage you to buy from the large, small scale mines. So we're not at all encouraging only large scale mines, of course. In fact, artisanal mining is a crucial livelihood for people all over the world, and it's a livelihood for the miners, and it's a livelihood for you that need to source that direct. So that's a misunderstanding. I think we encourage buying artisanally mined goods, but of course, you're going to have to do due diligence on that, and some of that is an informal economy. We're not saying that you can't source artisanally informally mined goods. We just are saying that you need to look at your counterparty and see if there's terrorism involved, is there money laundering involved, is there child labor at the mine. That's the thing. You know, there's 20 million artisanal gold miners worldwide. Most of them are doing a good job. Some of them may not have licenses. You know, some are still operating informally, but most of them are not involved with terrorism and criminals. So you need to cut out that percentage. That's what due diligence is about. The second point about getting information on mine of origin, that's a challenge. It's a constant challenge. But protect the identities and divulge confidential information. You can share that. Please.
अरे बैठो बैठो
Honorable Minister, MOS Finance, So we are honored with your presence here. The chairman and office bearers of Bullion Federation who have organized this grand opportunity for all minds to meet together. Chairman of GJF, representatives from OECD, DMCC and many other organizations here. It's indeed a great privilege to be here with all of you to represent many aspects where government is supposed to work hand in hand very closely with the industry for the development of that sector. I've been associated with gems and jewelry sector for almost 2 years now, and as Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, I have very closely looked at various aspects of this industry and found that this sector is not only important for the people who work in this industry for their livelihood, but it is a very important sector for government as well. For the simple reason that this sector is a labor-intensive sector. It provides huge employment to various segments of people in our society, and therefore the growth of this sector is very important for job-oriented growth which this country aspires. Today India is one of the fastest growing economy in the world, but we would definitely like this economic growth to be accompanied with even faster rate of employment growth and growth of opportunities in various sectors. So that is one reason that this sector is very important for government. Another reason that this sector is very important for government is that they deal in a product, they deal in something which is of great importance internationally. We have been able to make our space, create space for ourselves in the international markets. Today, Indian jewelry, whether it is cutting and polishing of diamond, or studded jewelry, plain jewelry, or jewelry related items, gold related items, silver items, these items are in much demand in the international markets. Because of the craftsmanship that we have traditionally inherited, and also because of the huge passion that India has for jewelry. We have been able to capture good markets, developed markets of US, Europe, UK, Gulf countries, and many countries in the world. And our exports from gems and jewelry industry has reached 40 billion mark in 2015. So this itself shows that again this sector is a huge foreign exchange earner for our country, and therefore is important not only for the industry who thrives on this sector, but also for the government which looks forward to such sectors and the growth in such sectors. This sector is also important for government because the sector calls for a lot of reforms, a lot of improvements, and a slow and steady progress towards being more transparent, being more accountable, of being more organized. Now therefore, I think we have to work together to achieve that. And if we are able to achieve that, the immense potential that lies hidden still in this sector can be unleashed, and we can see a much better growth than what we have already seen. We have a target that in 2022, that is in 5 years time from now, we will achieve an export of $60 billion in gems and jewelry sector. In the diamond sector, we are the world leaders by cutting, polishing and servicing about 95% of the diamonds of this world. But there it seems we have reached a saturation, because if we have already captured 95% of the world job work, especially in the small diamond sector, then obviously we do not see much potential. We have to sustain that level, try to do better there also. But we see much more potential happening in the field of gold jewelry, silver jewelry, and other articles of jewelry. And therefore gold as such, both as a commodity and as an item of savings in this country, is definitely of great importance to us. But here we have a dichotomy, because gold is on one hand raw material for the industry, and therefore the industry calls for least regulation, easy availability of raw material, easy flow of gold for their industry. On the other hand, gold is also a saving instrument. It is also something which has direct link with our current account deficit. It also depicts the sovereign risk of our country. So therefore the gold has to be canalized, it has to be regulated, it has to be monitored. And moreover, since most of the gold that we use has to be imported, therefore if we don't do a fiscal balance here, we may end up losing foreign exchange instead of earning it. So there has to be a fine mix of what gold goes into savings and investments, and what gold goes into manufacturing and exporting to earn back foreign exchange due to the value addition. So this tightrope walk is something which again challenges government to take to guard, safeguard interest of the industry, as well as the other factors also have to be taken into account. And therefore, keeping all these things in mind, I think it's a very important sector for government, and the presence of the Honorable Minister from Finance here in this forum itself depicts the government is quite serious about its role as a facilitator, as a prudent regulator for this sector. Without taking much of your time, in this conference, many things have been discussed. You would have slowly realized that many things are happening. This sector is changing very fast, and I personally want to put a progressive idea of self-regulation. Forums like Bullion Federation and various other forums of the industry should actually come together and devise strong mechanisms and processes for self-regulation. Because this sector, because of its sensitivities, I think the best way to regulate is to go for self-regulation. If you are able to do that, then we will be able to actually achieve the transformation that is required towards more transparency, towards more accountability, towards better processes, towards the ease of doing business with least obstacles from various, maybe say non-industry stakeholders. So therefore, the first step would be to actually come together and use the presence of international organizations to know what are the best practices internationally, what are the best processes accepted worldwide, what is happening in other countries which are doing well in this sector, to come together and have a self-regulatory mechanism. The second thing would be to actually make best use of the GST, which is the biggest reform that this government has introduced. One country, one tax concept of integrating this country, simplifying the processes, making the industry realize the potential of getting unorganized sector into an organized functioning is something which is the philosophy of GST. I think this sector is the biggest beneficiary of this philosophy if they actually tune themselves to cope up with the new requirements of the GST regime. If that is done, then I am sure that the unorganized sector will be the biggest beneficiary. Although today they may feel that they are probably sufferers because of this new regime, but in the times to come, they will be the biggest beneficiaries, and I think they will add to the growth of this sector the most. So therefore, today is just the right time to sit together, do this brainstorming, and evolve various ideas, various new methods of engaging with government, engaging with unorganized sector, engaging with industry, looking at various obstacles, putting them together and coming up with new solutions which will definitely improve the efficiency and the growth of this sector. So I am here as a well-wisher of this industry to wish you the very best, to make the best out of this conference, and then as a follow-up, the recommendations from this conference will definitely be a guiding principle for all of us to move ahead in the right positive direction. Thank you once again for giving me this opportunity to be here